Hello, and thank you for joining us for another Farotech podcast series. I'm joined by our CEO, Chris Carr. Hello, Chris.
Hey, how are you?
Good. My name's Todd Smith. I'm the VP of Partner Growth here at Farotech, and we have an exciting podcast series for you today. Many of you in the business world have been on LinkedIn, and if you're like me, I tend to be in a little bit of social media, mostly podcast or mostly LinkedIn. So one of the challenges specifically with any technology is really making sure that you're using that technology to the fullest. A lot of us have fancy iPhones and fancy computers, and really what we end up doing is only using about 10% of the actual capability of the whole device. So really what we're going to hope to challenge you today with and give you some education on is how you can use social media in your business. And we're going to talk a little bit about LinkedIn and maybe some other platforms. But for right now, Chris, I just want to share what we're talking about today is this. Uh, I'll show my screen real quick. But basically, we wrote a blog on social media tips for the professional platform. So we're just going to kind of go through that today and just talk about how that works. And so the first thing, Chris, is LinkedIn marketing.
Mhm.
Obviously, if you're a business professional, you have a profile. And for many of us, we kind of stop there.
Sure.
So what are some tips that you can share with the audience on really
Yep.
optimizing, your name, your brand, your company, your services? I know
Mhm.
that in the blog, you talk about the who, what, why, and how. So why don't
Yep.
we just start with the who?
Yep. Well, I think that one of the things that you should know is that going into this process that LinkedIn has changed probably more in the last 3 years since it's been bought by Microsoft than it
Hmm.
has in all of the years prior to that. They're constantly moving the goalposts and things like that. And so what happens, I find a lot of people either get intimidated by it or
Hmm.
they set it and forget it, which basically means they
Yep.
set up their profile years ago and then they haven't returned to use it as a platform that they use on a regular basis. Now, from my vantage point, if I invented a platform that had all the potential business, like I have so many companies out there that says, "Hey, I need to buy a list." And I'm like, "Well, why do you need to do that?" It's like, "Well, I need to make sure that I can get right in front of the right audience." So it's like,
Right.
if you look at every social media platform, LinkedIn is the only one out there that literally has the names and the titles of the people you're trying to reach. So the question is, why do you abandon it so early? And I think
Hmm.
it's because we overcomplicate it.
Yeah, certainly.
Yep.
So that's the who. And then within the who, the
Mhm.
blog talks about current clients, network partners, and potential clients. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Yep. Well, I think that the first thing you want to do is that when you have developed your own clientele, keeping your name in front of them and reestablishing yourself as a thought leader is going to be essential. And
Okay,
so, I'm going to recommend they do that through as many platforms as possible, including
gotcha.
email and things like that. But LinkedIn is one of those ones that I think is going to be really important because, you know, they bought from you for one reason,
Right,
but they're going to stay with you for other reasons. And
gotcha.
establishing yourself as a thought leader is going to be really important for
Yeah.
that.
All right. So just that's a really good point. And just can you just elaborate on ways to establish yourself as a thought leader on social media?
Mhm. Well, one of the reasons why I would let's try to figure out why social media works so effectively. For
Okay.
one, obviously, it's imagine it being like the biggest mall in the world. And so you have
Hmm.
tons and tons of people that are there. It's like, would you open up a shop in the biggest mall in the world if it was free? Probably,
Yes.
yes, right? The other thing you should need to know is that Google makes its money by advertising.
Hmm.
They make better money when they advertise more effectively to their target audience. So why is social media so effective? Well, it spoon feeds Google. This is their audience. This is what they love. This is what they
Right.
do. It's all right there. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so because you have to know that the biggest players in marketing, are all sort of symbiotic. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? It's one of those things where you want to make sure that as if you play by the rules, you play by the best practices, the people
Hmm.
that play best often get rewarded the most.
Gotcha. So the next question is like, what do I post? Like, what do you
Yep.
recommend? Is there like a progression of what
Yeah.
I post? Because like my biggest fear about social media is
Mhm.
putting up something that's misinterpreted or
Yep.
not accurate, or that's my biggest fear. So what do you recommend there?
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that thought leaders are going to do is that they're not going to just constantly talk about themselves and their own brand, because you don't want to do that to death. We developed something that we call an 80-20, and an
Okay.
80-20 essentially is set up so that you talk about 80% about the industry, what's going on. As a thought leader, they expect you to know what's going on in your industry.
Sure.
And then about 20%, you talk about you, your products, your services, your company, et cetera, et cetera.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? So you don't, I think that a lot of people get intimidated that they have to write some Shakespearean
Yeah. Yeah,
piece
exactly. Yeah.
every single
Or make
time you
themselves
post.
look really smart. Yeah.
Yep. I also think that the more you can humanize, the more you can
Okay.
be charming, you know, that's going to be really
Okay.
important.
Yeah, that's not hard for you. So let me ask you something else. What what about like videos, images, like
Yep.
what's that like,
Yeah.
from a best practices perspective?
Well, anytime you can add visual elements, that's what you want to do.
Gotcha.
Obviously you can do text only. I wouldn't do text if I can do a picture with text on it, because pictures are
Okay.
going to gravitate more. Video, I say in the blog, and I think this is a low estimate. I've heard as high
Yeah.
as 12 times, but I'm seeing
Yeah.
that, people engage with video about 5 times more.
Okay.
And I think that if I put video on my webpage,
Hmm.
I think that it's going to keep people on the page longer. When they keep you on the page longer, that's one
Gotcha.
of the SEO ranking factors. I can't
Sure.
prove this, but I'm pretty confident that LinkedIn is always looking for the psychological triggers, and that the longer you stay on a specific LinkedIn profile, or a LinkedIn business page, I think
Hmm.
they reward that, but I can't
Gotcha.
prove it.
Okay. All right. Now, what about links? Is that important? I know from an SEO perspective, we're constantly
Yep.
educating our clients on content, links,
Mhm.
backlinks. Does that play into LinkedIn at all?
It does. I mean, there's a variety of different ways, and I can't go into all of them, but I'm going to go into some low hanging fruit. Obviously, what you want to do is that because it's a networking event, and there's tons of people at this networking event. When I say it's a networking event, in
Right.
the blog I talk about LinkedIn being a networking event. I want to be able to mention other people that are
Hmm.
on LinkedIn, that you're trying to get in front of, or might add value to your thought leadership. And so
Gotcha.
when you write a post, in this post, I talked about Bryn Tillman and some other people.
Hmm.
Of course, I'm going to CC them on that post. Other things that I'm trying to do whenever I do social media is I want that to be the carrot, but I want them to leave social media and go to my website.
Gotcha.
Um, Now, are there chances where they just engage immediately from LinkedIn and they call phone number or they email? You can do that, but we've experienced the most impact when they leave LinkedIn and come to my website and find out more details.
Okay.
I also want to get them on my computer so I can get cookies on their computer and
Gotcha.
track them and engage them and stuff like that. But one other
So,
pro
so
tip
from
that I
that
didn't
perspective, real quick, sorry, from
yeah,
that perspective, we would recommend using LinkedIn as almost like a teaser, so sort of
correct.
putting out some information that just gives them like bite-sized information
Yep.
and then pulls them back into the site so that our marketing automation can kick in.
Yep. In fact, like when I do a post, I will do the first 2 paragraphs of my blog,
Okay.
and then I will literally try to leave a cliffhanger. If you learned anything from
Gotcha.
Netflix and Dallas,
Gotcha.
all the stuff
Yeah.
going on,
Right.
right? They want you to tune
Right.
in next week. Well, that's
Exactly.
what I want to do. If I give them everything right in LinkedIn, why would they come to my
Yeah.
website?
Exactly. So like the second Floby is free, just pay shipping and handling. Gotcha.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I like
And
that.
it's got corny over the years. You know what I mean? Like
Uh-huh.
the 10 tips that every, marketer needs to know. And number 5 will shock you. But by the way, number 5 is on my website and it's not on LinkedIn. You know what I mean? Like it's been used to death, but it's still true, right?
It's still effective, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, that makes
exactly.
sense. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Now, why should I care? Like, why, if I'm a business professional, why should I care about LinkedIn?
Oh yeah. Well, the problem is that they don't care enough. And so
Mm,
if I know that the clients I'm trying to engage with are in that mall, even though it's a really
okay.
big mall, right?
Hmm.
And you don't know how to find them, but if you got help, you could. Why would I be like, no, you know what? I want
Right.
all of those clients to leave that mall
Right.
and come to my building to engage with me, my products, and my services. It's like it just sort of just
Gotcha.
doesn't make sense.
Gotcha. So the analogy is LinkedIn's the mall and your building is your website.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. That makes sense.
And in the
Okay.
blog, I talk about, there's a thought leader in the LinkedIn space. Her name's Bryn Tillman.
Yep.
And before all this stuff was built, she was like in sales and she would meet these connected people. And this was like the 80s. and the guy would have a Rolodex. In the 80s, they used to have the Rolodex. It was before Outlook and all stuff like that.
I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Well, she would drool and be like, if I could borrow that Rolodex for 5 minutes,
Yeah.
it would change my
Yeah.
life.
Right.
Well, now
just make photocopies.
Exactly. Fax it to each other. But that Rolodex is right there online. But we're like, no, I need something better than that. I'm like, it's right there.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next part, and this is part of your strategy, is all right. So how do I optimize my profile? Because that's really important.
Yep.
Like I want people to look at my profile, and I want to see that I'm a thought leader. I want to see that I have a lot of connections. I want to see that I'm active. Yep. So what are some steps to optimizing your profile?
I want you to blur the lines, which makes no sense whatsoever.
No.
Usually, when I say blur the lines, I want you to know that your personal profile will be viewed. And I think everyone thinks it's just the personal profile is like my resume.
Gotcha.
I would want my personal profile to be a little bit about me, but a lot about my company and a lot of call to actions to tell you how I can improve your life.
Gotcha.
Right? Because you think a little bit less about you and use the opportunity to plug what you hope they get to. Because nobody cares that I played soccer in high school.
I don't really care. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And anybody who watched me play soccer in high school is very forgettable.
Gotcha. All right. Well, that's good. What about one of the points that I thought was really kind of interesting on the blog was include a call to action within your profile to convert profile views. Like to me, that sounds like it's a necessary marketing tactic, but I never thought about that from a LinkedIn profile. Can you expand on that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think one of the things that they're going to try to do is if you take them from the profile to your business page, the call to action, basically I think the large majority of the traffic that you're going to see on LinkedIn is a very people to people type thing.
Sure.
You're not seeing as many people to business, even though you have a LinkedIn business page, most of the time they're like, well, if I want that information, I'll go to your website. Right.
Right.
But what I want to be able to do on my profile is I want to lead them from my person, meaning me, my own profile, either to my LinkedIn page or even calls to action to my website.
To your website. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yep. And I think that that's going to be important. I think one of the other things that gets very misconstrued is that you can win in social media without advertising. And I mean, you sort of can, but I would, any client that I have is going to say, you know what, these companies don't make money by giving it away for free. And these algorithm changes happen so that less and less people see your stuff.
Right.
What's great about LinkedIn, and as the technology and as the advertising platform grows, there's even certain things in beta right now where I'm going to be able to get the ads literally to you're Todd Smith. So I need Bob Williams.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like try to do that in Facebook. It's going to be very hard to pick Bob Williams by name. LinkedIn is going to allow you to do that type stuff. Mm-hmm. Now, is LinkedIn more expensive? Yes, but it's because you can get the Bob.
Yep. So you can get more refined messaging to the right client quicker. And although it might cost more, it might be more effective.
You're literally speaking to Bob. Like the other ones are like, I can find people like Bob. Is Bob in there? Well, I can't tell you.
I can't tell you, but we think we know the profile for Bob. All right.
Exactly.
And then the last part I want to close with here is you mentioned in the blog 3 important metrics. Obviously, these are very specific to marketing, but we can apply them to social media, and LinkedIn is traffic generated, leads generated, and sales generated. Yeah. So why are those so important right now?
Well, I mean, there's always this I forget how you described it in high school, but it was like this thing was like if A equals B and B equals C, then A has correlation to C. Well, if I know how many visitors come to my website and I know how many website visitors turn into an actual opportunity, I could say, hey, you know what? This is how many visitors I need to get an opportunity. So if you know that sort of math, you really have to concentrate on A, which basically means how do they become a visitor? And so one of the challenges that we try to do is we try to connect automation platforms with LinkedIn. So without automation platforms, I'm going to talk about HubSpot. We're gold partners with HubSpot. I talk about HubSpot all the time. If I'm in Google Analytics, I'm going to be able to say 50 leads came from LinkedIn to my website.
Gotcha.
And maybe some of them engaged. But with something like HubSpot, I'm going to be able to see Bob came from LinkedIn, and then he came to my website. He went to these 3 pages on my website, and then he converted. And so that's where it gets really interesting is that when I start to think about metrics, if you sell products in volume, you might not care about those intricate details.
Right.
But if you work with some of the SaaS companies we work with, or some of the other clients like that, they want to know about every lead, and every lead has a name, and every name, is a relationship.
Gotcha.
And so I want to make sure that I'm connecting social media platforms with actual automation platforms that tell me this is how Bob engages.
Okay. That's really important too, because within that HubSpot application, we can actually define the origin of that contact.
Correct.
And then provide some ROI on how we're using it. And then obviously from an analytical and metric perspective, the cool part about LinkedIn is that it is so nimble. You can change your profile. You can't necessarily do A/B testing, but you can certainly, change and update pictures. You mentioned also in the blog, hashtags and keywords, in your job title, in your headlines, and your skills. So maybe just mess around with that a little bit to figure out what's most effective, and then tie that back into your marketing automation platform to see, hey, what's working for you.
I mean, it's literally, it's like kind of analytics at the speed of light. I mean, I think you sold print for what, 25 years?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, how expensive would it be to just change directions mid-course and say, hey, well, this worked here. We think we know some correlation. You know what I mean? Like,
it's quickly.
You know what I mean?
Cool.
At the speed of
definitely. Awesome. Cool. Well, we're almost out of time.
Okay.
Is there one closing thought that you'd like to give our audience today?
Yeah. I'm going to say this a lot. Adopt. If you haven't used LinkedIn, right? Like, if you're finding that you want to baby step into this, I would recommend tackling it on your own. But it has become complex enough where I would probably lean on using a thought leader or an expert in the space that's going to help you save time, cut corners. It's worth the money. I'm telling you, it's very easy to spend a lot of time in LinkedIn and get no results, and then throw your hands up and say, this mall's worthless.
Doesn't work.
No, it's actually got all the people inside. You just don't know the system to find them.
Okay. So you're saying if you don't think you're using it properly, get some help.
Get some help.
Okay. Awesome. Cool. All right. Well, thank you for your time. It was a pleasure learning from you again today. And thank you all for joining the Fairtech podcast series.
Remember to subscribe. We want to get in front of you as often as possible. And if you subscribe, you're going to get notified every time we create a new post.
Awesome. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.